Right. Well, just a little bit about me. I hate getting labeled as an engineer, I guess. Probably a lot of my background, I enjoyed the engineering school here. I learned a lot about it. I don't know that I enjoyed it, but I have some value. I mean, I found a lot of value in what I did there. But coming over to the business kind of opened up my mind to, maybe some of the possibilities of making some money. They kind of teach you over in the engineering school that you're going to make this amount of money, you're going to do this, and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life, and so that didn't really appeal to me completely. I was thinking, man, I don't think I can go and GPS, section corners or go and we were working in GPS and signs, and Rex over there, he's actually in the engineering program and he works for us, so he's looking at both sides of the aisle as well. But when I went into engineering, I was thinking, man, went into environmental engineering. I thought, I'm going to go down some streams, do some fishing, look at the habitat, do all this stuff. And I've never left my desk since I graduated. And so it's interesting how that changes. But a little bit about me and iWorQ Systems. iWorQ was started in 2000. These are all the titles that I have and Garyn has. It's the interesting one there is graphics design. Garyn, we've kind of highlighted that as one of his premier responsibilities in the company as well as president. But it's interesting the hat you wear in starting a business. We started with just the two of us. Let me go ahead and get to that next slide. Do I have like a remote for this?
That would be too technical.
Man, I'm not even getting to the next slide here. There we go. Whoops. All right. My background, we've kind of gone over that. I was also, while I was getting my MBA, I was the business manager for the Utah Transportation Center, or the Technology Transfer Center. And what we did there is we helped cities and counties in Utah take new technologies and use them, so like software systems and that's really where we got our idea for the company. Let me go ahead and go to the next one. So here's the path. And the reason why we ended up with iWorQ, it can probably be traced back to one moment in time. And in the summer of 1996, I was a firefighter up in southern Idaho, and I wanted to go back and do that. But I found my wife, my future wife, she was here and she was going to stay in Logan that summer because she had to get residency. Anybody from Idaho trying to get residency? you know that, or had to go through that battle? You have to pay, you have to work your way, you have to steal licenses and stuff trying to get your residency here in the city. But anyways, she was working on that, and so I needed a job if I wanted to stay home and date her. And so I was in this study hall, you guys probably have them, and I just said, hey, has anybody here got a job? And sure enough, here's Garyn. He says, I've got a job for you. And I was like, man, I don't know if I can work with him. That was definitely the first thing that I thought. I'm thinking, there is no way I can work with him. But I needed the job. I was in love, so I took it. And so what we did is we took a GPS out and we set it by a sign. And we did 20,000 signs. We GPS 20,000 signs in northern Utah. We went around and wrote down like 30 things about each sign, or maybe even 60 things about each sign, and recorded that and put it into a database. It was fun. We enjoyed it. It taught me a lot about, software and stuff. Being an engineer, and the timing, we didn't really have computers. We didn't use computers a lot. Maybe an Excel spreadsheet or something like that. I'm sure they use it a lot more now, but the internet wasn't quite what it is today, and so it was a little bit different from that perspective. But it got me into that. It got me using a computer. I bought one for myself, and I started using it. Then, like I said, I went and worked on my MBA while I was there. I graduated as an engineer, went and did some interviewing, and I thought, these engineering firms aren't for me. I'm not going to be able to do it. I went and interviewed down in Vegas. I went to this place. There was maps all over the place. I'm like, man, this is too boring for me. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And so I went back and made sure I had that job with the T-Squared Center again, and they were able to give me a full-time job so I could get benefits and stuff through the university. So I did that, and I decided, well, you know, I ought to check out this MBA thing. So I went and took the GMAT. Has anybody taken that? Who's here looking to get an MBA? Anybody? Something to consider with the business climate, you know, right now. I'm sure that, you know, jobs aren't like readily available, and it's a great program here. It's a lot like this class probably, where you have people come in and talk, or you're talking about a lot of group projects. So you learn a lot of interactive stuff. You learn a lot about business and so forth. So, but I really enjoyed getting my MBA here. Then after I graduated with my MBA, I still didn't have a job. I'd interviewed a few times. So now I had this MBA. I had an engineering degree. I went and interviewed with engineering firms. You know, they don't know what's going on. They're thinking, well, we don't care that you went and got an MBA. We're just interested in what you can do as an engineer. So I went and interviewed with some business, you know, on the business side, and they really didn't care about the other. And so luckily, we were at a conference, and this engineering company, it was an engineering company, they come up and asked me and Garyn if we wanted to interview and start, you know, look at starting a company with them that focused on pavement management and sign management, some of the things we'd worked on at the T-Squared Center. And so we went in there and we interviewed with them, and out of the interview I got to see a side of Garyn I hadn't seen. I mean, I had a lot of respect for him, but we were kind of in a competitive environment, and we walked out of that interview, and Garyn had us positions, he had us salary, he had us benefits, he had us a piece of the company. We were ready to go. And so, you know, I thought, man, I hadn't really thought of this, but hell, Garyn negotiated this deal with us. That sounds like a pretty, you know, that's the way to go, because all my offers before had been way less than that, and you know, I thought, well, we just got married. I just got married, and I'm thinking, I don't have any kids. Let's give it a shot. And so Garyn took that offer, took it to another company we'd worked with here locally. Has anybody heard of Engeo Systems? Have you? A couple of you. It was a growing company. It was booming. They had about 10, you know, about the same amount of employees as we have now when we started working with them. That was in 1996 on that sign project. But by the time we got there, they expanded to 50 employees. They were getting money, and it was coming in. So Garyn took our offer that we had with this other company to them and said, hey, let's do this for you. And sure enough, he struck a better deal there with them, and we were off and running. But and also, if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me. I always hate it when people do that. One of the things I do want to do, this is like our first business plan that we ever wrote to get money. So I'll just kind of send it around. It's interesting why do you write a business plan? It's always to get money. I mean, that's always the reason why you go to get money. So we started with Engeo. Well, what were we going to sell? We had this idea. We'd help cities do it. There was this other software company selling what we did, and basically what we do, it's hard to explain. My dad still doesn't know what I do, and I've been doing it for 10 years, and he's an engineer. He slaps me with the engineer stigma again, but what we do is we sell software to cities to help them with their management. So it's more like work orders, workflow, things like that. We help them manage their assets. Like, how much do you think the pavements in Logan are worth? Just the asphalt in Logan as a value. Any idea? Anybody have an idea? Devin?
No idea.
No idea? The golfer doesn't know? Okay, it's worth about $200 million. Is when if you had to replace all of them in Logan, it's worth about $200 million. Well, what our software does is it helps them make better decisions about where they're going to spend their money. So it goes in and it tells them, we can do an inventory of all their roads, rate them, and then our software will tell them, you need to spend this much money here and this much money here, so you can do, like, you see the chip seals on the roads where they got the rocks and everything all over? Everybody hates those. Cities that don't do it, though, are really falling apart and not spending their money wisely. So our program helps them make better decisions on that. And that's what we started with. That was our first program that we wrote. And it's probably one of the best ones we got. Unfortunately, it's not the most popular program in the world. It wasn't going to make us any money, that's for sure. It does now because it's part of the group, but it wasn't going to make us some money. When we started there, what was software like back in 2000? Did anybody have an internet account? Let's see, most of you guys were probably pretty young, but in high school maybe. So, you guys remember what it was like at all back then? Yeah, it was slower. Everything was installed on a computer. The internet was there and you were able to use it, but it hadn't grown like today. Now, how many people bank online? I mean, it's almost 100%. How many people have Facebook accounts? You know, everybody ought to come and be a fan of iWorQ systems too, if you get a chance. You know, I think that's changing the way that we market things now for sure, but everybody gets on the internet. I think all of our employees, unfortunately, they come in, including Rex, and the first thing they do is they spend, you know, what do you spend, about 2 hours on Facebook before we get going? So roughly 2.5 hours on Facebook before they get started. But no, Rex is great, but we do have some that maybe abuse that, including myself. So, you know, but it wasn't on the internet back then. And so we had this software that Ngeo had wrote for sign management that we used at the DOT to collect all those signs, but it was installed on a computer. Well, who knows? Anybody know anybody that works for the city in the Public Works Department?
The city.
You know somebody that works? How good are they on computers?
Not very great.
Not very good. Not very good.
Logan City?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be Logan City, but for the most part, Public Works Department people, you know, it's sure changed over the time, but they don't get on the internet. They don't get on computers. You know, most of the biggest problem we have, I remember trying to sell to Smithfield, and he's like, our guys will never do it. They hate computers, you know. So that's how it goes. Yeah, I mean, that's really the dilemma is, so how are they going to install a software program on their computer and then use it? I mean, it's just, going from there to there is just crazy. And that was the problems that most of our competitors were having. That was the problem that Ngeo was having in marketing their products. So we went into this meeting and we're like, man, we don't know what we're going to do, but we're here at this meeting, and the president of Ngeo was Todd Hogard, and he showed us a website, and it was called landlight.com, and it was something they developed. Well, what landlight.com does, and they use it here in Cache Valley, is it's on the web. You go on the web, you search your parcel number out, you find out your property taxes and who owns it, whatever information you need to know about it, and it's all online. So there's users online, and it's all online. At that time, there wasn't a Facebook. I mean, now you can think of it, Facebook is exactly what we do. We need people to come online and use our application. But at the time, that was like a breakthrough, and we're like, man, that's what we need to try. So sure enough, we started doing it. I quit in July, and Garyn quit in August from the T-Squared Center. And I started writing the program in July. And by August, I had something that resembled a program to write. By the way, I didn't have any computer programming classes or anything. We just had to learn. We just had to figure it out. We knew we needed this. We just had to figure it out. So I had one. Has anybody had the Visual Basic class that they have here in their undergrad for business with databases access, the access programming class? That's the one I had. So that was what helped me get going. So I was going to be the programmer, and Garyn was going to sell it. Well, Garyn started selling it in August. We had about 10 customers by December, and I don't know what he was selling because we didn't have anything to show him. But he had sold it, so we had a company. And we were getting money from Ngeo. So did I get that one? Let me see. Maybe let's see, that might be it. Well, let me see if I missed one in there. Yeah, well, I didn't miss it anyway, so we're okay. All right. So when we got going there, and that was in the summer of 2000. Oh, there we go. And we went for a year and a half there. Well, Ngeo got this huge amount of money for venture capital. You know, what happens when venture capitalists come in? Does anybody know what I'm talking about there with venture capital?
They take ownership of the
Yeah, they take ownership in the company. What else do they do? Yeah, they take over. They decide whatever is important to the business and what isn't. And what we found out was iWorQ and this other landlight.com were on the side of we weren't important to the business. You know, which in the end worked out for us, but it sure scared us at the time. So this is 2001, and we're getting kicked out. We're getting thrown on our butt. We had 20 customers about. I think we might have had a few more than that, but our annual revenue was about $20,000. So we knew next year we were going to make $20,000. We had me and Garyn as employees, we had a programmer, and we had a salesman. So we had a server and one desktop and one laptop, and we moved to a little office that was, I don't know, it was probably, you know, this big, a part of this room, and all four of us sat there, and we just worked. Right next to some guys from, has anybody heard of, New Dawn Technologies? Has anybody heard of them? They're a little bigger than us. They're a great company. They were right next to us. So it was kind of fun because we're a couple startups ready to go, you know, and it was fun from that perspective. We needed some money. We were only going to get $20,000. I needed more than that to live on. Garyn needed a lot more. He had 4 kids, so, you know, I didn't have kids yet, so we were living lean, but I'm sure Garyn needed more money. I didn't realize that at the time, but I thought, you know, I didn't realize what kind of an investment he was making and a risk that he was taking. So Garyn visited every bank in the valley. Nobody wants to lend to you. I mean, we had 20,000 coming in. Nobody wants to lend to you. So they decided, we had a couple projects lined up, and they decided that they would give us, Lewiston State Bank would give us some money based on the receivables that we had coming in. And so we got them to give us, Garyn said it wasn't $30,000. That was the figure I remembered. He would know more. But anyways, they give us like $10,000 or $15,000, so that's what we started with. We had 4 programs. We had pavement, signs, sidewalks, and markings. So what do we do? Well, there's another software company. We kind of let ourselves go for sale a little bit. You know, as we were trying to get out of the Vingeo, we're like, well, will somebody buy us and try to fund us? And so we ran into this company of a guy that we'd interviewed for a sales position. He worked at QuQuest Software. And they're in Salt Lake City, and they built time and attendance software, you know, where you clock in and out on with your time card. Anyways, and they wanted to take their software and move it to the web because that was an industry that was already on the web. Where iWorQ was, none of our competitors still are on the web. I mean, people still haven't caught that vision. They're a little better, their client server's a little better, but they're still not on the web. Quest, all of their competition was on the web, and I guess they're called QQuest. But everybody, all their competition was there, and they needed to get there or they were going to lose their business. And so I spent 18 months working there, and Garyn sold iWorQ. While I was there, we took their existing software package, rewrote it, moved it onto the web, and started signing up their customers that way. And it was critical to getting us through. Quest, you know, the interesting thing is we learned a ton from that experience because even though Garyn was working on iWorQ and I was working on that, we still worked together, and we were trying to decide things for iWorQ. We were trying to decide things for QQuest. And the interesting thing about them is they were a real company. I mean, it was a big company. They were already selling $800,000 to $1 million a month, you know, on their existing software. They had a sales force that was just lean and hungry, and they were in a bunch of cubicles, and we just never seen that before. They were on the phones all the time, and they were closing deals. We had a guy there that would just close deals left and right, and we tried to get him to come with us a little bit there, and he ended up staying. But through that, we just learned a ton. They spent a lot of money on internet marketing. They, you know, which is an approach we haven't ever used much, but they used it to, you know, for a lot of success. But they were marketing more to small businesses like us. We still use their software to clock in and out. Rex uses it to clock in and out daily, and you know, he missed so many times clocking in that now he manages that side for us. So
it's interesting. QQuest, the owner, is a graduate of Utah State and very supportive of all Utah State programs. He graduated from here. His name's Bert Plummer, and he's a lifelong friend.
Yeah. No, we made some great friendships, and he was the president. He kind of took us under his wing, and mentored us along. It was really cool that way. We learned a ton from him. He had a partner named Tad Allen with him, and they had some ownership. We never really found out exactly how that all worked, but Tad Allen was their sales manager, and we learned a lot from him as well. And from QQuest, I learned how to program. Moving all that stuff over, I really got better at it. You know, there was a lot of time there at iWorQ when I felt like we were working with NGO, and they had real programmers there, and I was trying to build iWorQ, and I'd go over and talk to them, and they'd be like, "Man, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Get away from me," you know. And I'd ask them a question, try to get them to help me on something, and man, they wouldn't give me the time of day, would they, Garyn?
No, we didn't talk their language.
I could not speak it, so I had to get on. Well, how do you learn? Well, you get on the web these days. I don't know what I'd have done without the internet. So, and Google. I learned how to program through Google. So then we get done with QQuest. Well, we still didn't have enough money to make it. We didn't have any more employees. I think we still had 4 or 5. We might have had 5 employees, but the QQuest money had ended, which wasn't much. It was about $10,000 or $11,000 a month was all. So to support 4 or 5 people, it still wasn't doing enough. But iWorQ had grown a little bit. We had $100,000 annually, and Garyn had landed some great consulting contracts with the DOT, and he'd built some relationships with some of our cities to help us bring in some extra revenue. So we kind of built this other side of the company, which was a software consulting company and then a data collection company from our experience of collecting signs and stuff. And Garyn, I mean, he just has a fascinating, I mean, you get him in a room. I always watch him present, so now he's watching me. I feel a little bit intimidated by that, because Garyn, I mean, he can light up a room. He can. It's pretty fun to watch, and he catches everybody's, you know, I don't know, his sarcasm is great, let's just say it that way. And he's got some great jokes that I can't tell. So we still weren't a company back then, but there was a couple things that changed everything for us. You know, and if I look back, I'm sure Garyn would have some different ideas of this, but there was 2 things that made it work. One of them is we changed the commission structure for salesmen. So immediately we were just giving them money to sell our product so we could keep our salesmen so they could represent us, but there was no real incentive to go out and make sales. So we just took the base out from under it. We offered them about $1,000 a month, you know, as a base, which we found that it isn't enough to live off unless you want to. And then we give them 60% of whatever they sold that year. So if they sold 80,000 in contracts, they got 60% of that on top. Then we give them 10%, because all of our contracts are annual renewing. So like with the city of Logan, I think it's $4,800, and they've paid every year since 2002 or something. So, you know, we build our company, every time somebody gets a sale, that much goes into our revenue stream, as long as we don't lose them. We're losing a few more now, maybe because of the economy, but it hasn't ever been a really bad thing. The other thing that we did was we built a work management application, and I fought Garyn on that for a long time. I thought there was no way they needed that, and he kind of pushed me to think about it, and finally one day, I don't know if I was just bored, but we decided we're going to write it, and we wrote it, and sure enough, we got a salesman at about that same time that he understood that process really well, and he was just able to sell it like crazy. So he was able, our first salesman that was there sold it in 2 weeks. You know, he was able to get this thing rolling out, and he sold it to a city in 2 weeks. If you've ever sold anything to a city, 2 weeks is just a miracle to get something sold. I mean, it's usually 6 months or a year down the line. And he'd sold, in his first month or 2, he'd sold like 3 times. So work management, and I could probably include him in on that, they changed the way we sold it.
Hey, Jared.
Yes?
Did you start to mention residual?
Uh-huh.
Was that the 10%?
Yeah. Yeah, the 10% of so like for Logan City, the guy that sold Logan, although he's not with us, would get, you know, of the 4,800, he'd get, what, 480.
And that was just for the life of the account?
Well, as long as they're with us. So, yeah. And that, you know, and it really did. It gave them an incentive, so Now we've got salesmen that have been there some time. Well, their base is pretty good. They got a pretty good chunk. You know, we've got a salesman that sold 300,000 or 400,000, so he's got 40,000 head start every month or every year on his base salary. So it just changed everything for us. Although that's probably been the hardest thing about having this business is hiring employees. I don't know how you do it. If anybody learns how to do that, I can go in there and I know that I can't pick out a good employee. You know, there's very few of them. Rex was actually one of them. I'll give him this compliment. Rex was hired. We had 2 engineers that come and interviewed with us. And we're only hiring 1. And they got there and we interviewed these 2 guys. And after we left that interview, we're like, we need both those guys. I mean, we can't do it without both those guys. Those guys, they both brought something different to the table, and both of them ended up being stellar. Rex has been great. We hope he stays with us. He's actually graduating and interviewing a little bit, hopefully a lot. Are you interviewing at all?
I'm trying.
He's trying. But we hope we want him to interview because you got to see what's out there. We don't want him to pigeonhole us, you know, but we think we got a good deal. So anyways, iWorQ started to grow from that. We're nationwide now. I don't know, how many states? You're in 45?
45.
We don't have like Illinois.
Illinois, Maine, North and South Dakota.
I say Illinois, I got a salesman. Okay. And he's a funny guy. But anyways, does anybody know Chad Lindley? Anybody here know Chad Lindley? Yeah, there you go. Okay, Chad Lindley. You'll have to tell him I said this. I told a story about him. But anyways, he's got Illinois and he's got Utah. Okay, we sell all the time in Utah because we're here. We can go visit them. It's just so much easier to sell in Utah. And we're trying to get these salesmen to reduce the amount of states that they have so they can focus in and get them to, get more closes. And so so I'm there with Chad and I'm like, well, you've got this Illinois. This was a year ago, mind you. And so you got this Illinois and you got Utah. Which one of those are you going to not take? And he would not let go of either of them. And still to this day, he doesn't have a sale in Illinois. So I remind him of that every time I see him. Every time I see him. Yeah, 25 minutes a day talking to him about that. But we have a good time. I mean, we're small. I like our employees. That hasn't always been the case. And it changes from time to time. But the coolest thing for me about working for iWorQ is our employees and the camaraderie that me and Garyn have. I'd have never believed. I mean, and Garyn talked about this when we were talking about this presentation. Getting a partner is about the most important decision you'll make. Employees are a big decision, but I wouldn't have been able to make it without Garyn. I know for a fact that our company wouldn't be successful without him. And it's been fun, and we've grown into a really good friendship. I mean, we're best friends from the deal. You couldn't have said that about us before he hired me at the T-Squared Center. You couldn't have said that about us before we started this company. I mean, we were pretty combative. Both of us had a lot of drive and wanted to be successful. But man, I've been really glad or fortunate to have Garyn as a partner. We go on a cruise every year with each other, spend 7 or 8 days, and we write that off. So there you go. There you go. We write that off.
Take our wives, we don't go together.
Yeah.
Some of the guys are looking at us funny. I'm married, I have 4 kids. He's married, has kids. We go as a family on a cruise.
See, that's why he's not up here talking about this.
I saw something about the love bug and buying.
Go back to the life, Jared.
No, it's interesting he brings that up. So I'm going to get my haircut this morning, actually, and I'm in there and I'm talking to this gal, and I said, it's been busy. We went on this cruise. I went on this cruise with my partner, and man, I got a weird look, and then she kind of go on a little bit. So, you did, huh? Was it for vacation? I said, yeah, we go as a business thing. Oh, yeah. So you and your partner, huh? Yeah. She goes. Then I said that I could tell there was something there. I mean, I take my wife and he takes his wife, but that happened today. I always call him my partner. I got to say business partner, but anyways. So now we add about 8 to 10 customers monthly. We've done that for the last 2 years. We've kind of hit although that's still growth for us, we've kind of hit a wall in the number that we can add. You know, that's one of the barriers that we have right now, is how to get through that and make it, you know, how do we go from 8 customers to 50? You know, or how does that change? We thought we would add more salesmen. So we used to sell 8 to 10 and we had 2 salesmen. We sell 8 to 10 now and we have 6. So that didn't work out exactly, but that is the dynamic. We have about 8 support staff, and that's been a big help. We didn't always have that. And it was always either Garyn or I filled in questions, and Rex when he wasn't in school, and we got a couple other part-times that help us with that. But now we've at least got the phone, so if somebody calls in, we answer the phone. But we used to, in the early days, we could sit on our computer and we could watch and see everybody log in, because you know we're on the web, so we can see them log in. Well, it would go like 2 days without somebody logging in. But now it doesn't go 2 minutes without a phone call coming in or a question. So I guess that's good. Here's some of the questions I have for you guys. And I'll kind of go around and ask this. Where do we go from here? What kind of things, you know, it's always good to take it back to a classroom setting and find out, you know, without all of the background and stuff that we have, or we've got, like the work management thing, I just felt like it didn't work, and so you're kind of biased, and then it does. But if you can get over some of those biases that you have, there's probably a lot you can do. Of course, we got the bad economy. You know, it's not good. It hasn't hit our sector yet. It really hasn't. I mean, we get a little bit. We've probably lost 5 customers maybe to it, you know, that said, hey, we don't have enough money. We can't keep going. But, and there's and that's a pretty good excuse, but still people are interested in our software. This is one of our best months we've ever had. You know, we're going to add 10 or so customers again, but for a lot more dollars than we have in the past. So we're not sure about that. The other thing we've got is, we've always borrowed. Anybody heard of the bank bailout coming through here, the last little bit? I'm sure you have. Well, there's an interesting spot when you wonder if it affects small businesses. Well, we got, as soon as that, the bank started to fail, we had a loan through Zions that we had that was an unsecured line, and it was for $50,000. Do you work for Zions?
No.
That's not true? Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Anyways. Is it a dirty word?
No, I didn't say anything.
You'll have to enlighten us to that. But anyway, so we had a loan through Zions. Well, immediately after we started hearing this stuff, they're like, you're done with that loan. Well, you have to start paying it off right now. We'll stop it right there at that amount of money, and you got to start paying it back. Well, that
When they weren't in trouble.
Well, I know. Thank heavens we have Lewiston State Bank. And that's another story. Why did we go to Zions to get money when we had Lewiston State Bank? Well, back in about 2004, Claire Leishman, who was our banker at Zions, or at Lewiston State Bank, had a heart attack. So what did that do? We had a personal relationship with him, and he had a heart attack, and they're looking at our loan, and they're like, man, this doesn't add up. And I'd agree with them, but we had this relationship. I mean, the numbers didn't look good, so, but it was interesting that anyways, he had this heart attack, so that loan got called in. Well, immediately we're thinking, as soon as we get this figured out, let's go try to get some more money. And Garyn went to Zions and got the more money. Well, this year it come back to haunt us because, I mean, our burn rate is a lot more than it used to be. I mean, we used to get by on $10,000, $15,000 a month, and now it's, $60,000 or $70,000 a month. Well, we don't even have lines of credit that big. So if you have one bad month, you don't have $60,000 to go borrow to make it work. And probably that's been, Garyn's juggled that so good, but this bailout deal, I mean, Zions took like $2 billion. And they didn't give us any, that's for sure. So So we're working to find a new bank. And Lewiston State Bank has offered to give us some more. But again, if Claire has a heart attack, we're done again. So, the other things we have are, so we can save money. We can take, we're kind of at a pinnacle here. It's growing fast. I mean, there's some real growth out there. We've got, it's hard to get the first customer in a state, but it's easier to get more after that. So we've got all these footholds all over the place. And we could really take advantage of that if we went after it. The economy's bad though, so do we save our money? Do we bring it in and we just say, hey, let's try to keep we don't have a loan with Zions anymore, so we probably better build up our own loan. Because we've really tried to float our money, invest in it, and put it back into the company and go that way. The other thing is we could expand our product offering. So we could hire developers, maybe look for a different sector, or try to sell. Some people might know I have golf software in here. One of the things, and that leads to how does everybody define success? Everybody defines it a little differently. I define it whenever you get free golf. So that's how I've defined it, and I've hit that goal because I have free golf at Birch Creek and Logan River, and so does Garyn. And that was kind of the other sector that we've looked at. So I've reached the pinnacle. I'm living the life, living the dream. But I'm a horrible golfer though, but I love to go. The other thing is we could expand our consulting services, hire some more engineers. We do a lot of work there. I mean, we do a couple $100,000 in consulting services a year. There's probably more out there to get. We like to go, I personally, I won't do sign collection because I did so many of those, I don't want to do it. But I'll go out and rate roads. I'll go GPS a manhole cover or something in a car. Or, we've done data collection projects. Garyn, the only person that could go and do a data collection project in Maui and not have a good time is Garyn.
It's a big project.
He hated it. He took his dad with him, and his dad doesn't sit down. He's gone on a mission now, so we can't use him. But his dad, he's working from 6 to 8 for us, and they're driving around rating these roads. But Garyn didn't have any fun in Maui. So, anyways, we could expand those things. Anybody have any suggestions or stuff? I kind of want to pose these 5 things to this class, and based on what you're hearing, or does anybody have any insights? Or
Before we get into that, what exactly do you guys do? You talked about GPS data collection, and you talked about pavements, but what do you do with that?
Well, our software helps them manage those things. So it's very hard to explain. I always have a tough time. My dad doesn't understand what we do. We have this unique niche where it's a software on the internet, so a city can come in and they can click on a road. Let's look at it real fast.
I'll tell you a little bit. If you go to a bank and you want to borrow money for a car, they ask you what's the make, what's the model, how many miles it has. Why did they ask you those questions? They want to determine the value of it. So just like that industry has a method to determine the value of that car, city government and engineering has a way of valuing every asset the city has. It doesn't matter whether it's a hydrant or a sign or a road. We look at 5 or 6 parameters and I can tell you the value of that asset within a range. So what that does then is cities bond. They borrow money against those assets. So Logan City, if they want to borrow money, they go to the bank or they go to the bond and they say, we have $2 million worth of pavements. And the first question they ask is, well, $200 million. Well, what's the condition? What's the value of that asset? Well, you have to show them. Well, we look at these parameters based on a standard the industry uses, like the N88 for a car. That standard tells you that that's how much it's worth. Okay, we'll borrow you the money against that. So for all the capital assets the city has, we track that number for them.
So you're like the Kelly Blue Book of city's assets?
That is a great definition.
Okay.
Can we use that?
Yes.
Okay.
They probably won't let us.
So I can use that.
Maybe we could borrow the senator that's Jordan, and we could get him to rip off the Kelly Blue Book.
How do they borrow against illiquid assets?
It's not really like they borrow, but it's an accounting standard that was set down on them because they don't track it. Cities don't track it. We're selling to cities that don't track it. So they have $200 million worth of assets, and they don't track it. So this standard was just saying that you guys aren't tracking this. If you want to borrow anything, then you better be tracking anything that's over like $5 million in value. Any asset that you have in the city that's over $5 million in value, as a whole, you better track. And it's gone down and down. I think now if it's over $1 million, then you have to track it. So that was kind of our niche initially too. It's just a standard. It's not a law. The banks really don't use it. But if a city doesn't meet those criteria, they don't get the big bonds.
They can't bond, they can't
Yeah.
bond. You guys are, if you've done accounting or business, this government accounting standards board, Gatsby, the government accounting standards board statement 34 is what manages capital assets for cities. Gatsby 34 is what it's called.
One of the simplest programs, I'll show you this. If you want to go complain to your city or you want to ask a question, we have software that lets you do that. It's called talktomycity.com. So this would allow a citizen, the city would have a link on their website to this page. The citizen would then enter it in. So I could come in here and I could say, you're always worried about what are in these pull-down menus when you look on here, but I could put my phone number in, let's see, 755-5126, and hit submit request. And it goes ahead and it submits it. It emails anybody in the city that might need an email based on what the criteria was they had. And I can also come in here. Now as a city, I can open up this request and follow it through, send it to another application that will track the material used on it or who went out and did it and track notes and stuff. This is probably the most basic of our applications, but you guys can see the value in that. When we first added it, we signed on about all 15 cities in the first month, and it's been pretty successful. You'd think they'd already have that on their websites, but it's kind of a big stretch for them to get there. So, any other questions? Or?
So besides cities, what about what's in between the cities? Your state government or your state highways and everything. Have you looked into expanding into that region, or is it just such a massive government ball that it's not worth?
No, that's a good question. We haven't even gotten to the big cities. If you're talking like, we have some bigger cities, but most of them aren't like, let's say Salt Lake City, for instance. They're kind of above us, or they have a software system that they use for everything that they do. Is anybody familiar with SAP software? That type of thing. It's an organizational based software that runs off a database. They can take orders, they can fulfill orders, they can run work orders, they can, custom internal. So it's a big time software. They'll pay millions for it. Most of them have a software package like that. We have a tough time competing there. We'd like to charge the $1 million, but our software just isn't that, I guess, robust is probably the word.
We do some work with the DOT. We do consulting and develop stuff with DOT, but their standard's Oracle. So all of there is Oracle tools and Oracle development. They don't buy anything off the shelf. They customize everything internally using Oracle tools. So they'll hire us and say, hey, we want a custom version of this. And we've done that for the DOTs. But this is something we sell out of the box to cities.
Yeah.
Buy it and they customize it through the interface and off they go.
Yeah, we add whatever fields they want to track and everything. And we do it for, now our biggest programs are probably work management is our #1 program. Oh, sorry, I'll go ahead.
Oh, no, so do you then go out and survey all of their roads for them and input that data?
That's kind of our consulting side. We don't do as much of that as like I said before, our pavement management wasn't going to work. We weren't going to make a company based on selling that. Just not enough cities want to do it. But yeah, we do offer that, and there's good money in it for us. There's quite a high margin on it if we can get more people to do it. So we like it. They're better customers if we can get them to do it. Not all of them do it.
So to use your software, they have to go in and put in the themselves?
Yep. And the beauty about being on the web, I mean, probably the biggest advantage other than the installation problems that you have is they call up, we're looking at the same screen they are. We're logged in as them, we're looking at exactly what they're looking at. If they don't know how to use a computer, we can still help them. So, because we're looking at the same stuff they are. You might have to, I walked into this in Commerce, Texas, I walked into the Public Works office. The guy sits down at the computer and his boss was sitting behind him, and we went ahead and started the training, and I was going to have him you know, walk us through it. The guy didn't know what a mouse was. So, I mean, some of our customers now uses it all the time. So we're trying to be the easy to use solution. We're trying to be kind of that low cost alternative to some of our competition.
I was thinking about the incentive program you have through your salesman. Because you're saying you'd like to make like 50 more come in.
Yeah.
You only have like 8 to 10 per month. And if they're making enough sales that their base pay is like $90,000, how much incentive is that for them to keep making a lot more sales?
To be honest, our one that makes that's a good question. The one that makes the most sells the most still. Even though his base pays probably doesn't sell as much as he would if it was lower, but he just still sells the most. And I think that there's an interesting transition. Like I said, I cannot hire to save my life. I don't know how to do it. Me and Garyn will interview him. We could flip a coin, and it wouldn't make a better decision. Some people just have the drive to do it. And I'm sure there's more to it than that. I realize that we have a lot to learn in that regard. I mean, I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons we need to overcome in the next year. And but our commission structure, we changed it and it made our company grow. But now we're really looking at it to see what we've got to do to make. Why did 2 guys sell this much and why do 6 not? Well, some of that's training and some of that's the economy and some of that's other things. But why didn't it add up? When you add 2 to 2, why didn't that double? It sure didn't for us, and that's our dilemma. If any of you guys could come solve that for us and be the salesman that.
Yeah, we'll hire you.
We'll hire you.
How are you getting a hold of customers aside from salesmen just contacting city authorities? How's your product getting out there?
That is completely how we do it. We base it completely
off of calls.
Completely off of calls. The beautiful thing about cities is they all print. Every state has a directory of every person in the city. So they have like who's the public works director, who's the city manager, who's this. So we can contact those people directly and find out whether or not they want the product or not. We don't have to. They all need it, so it's not quite a cold call. It's not like QQuest was. They had to do marketing outside of that because they didn't know who needed time and attendance software. We know that everybody needs our software, and usually they're making a decision about it right now. So they've either have it in place. They don't have it, somebody's putting pressure on them to do it. That's why it's been our most effective way of marketing. We did do some mailers and stuff, and we've done some since then, but none of them have had the success of that. And maybe now as we're growing and this decision.
Do you send people out, like set up an appointment with city officials and do a full presentation, or do you just see where they're at?
We just make phone calls, and that's the tough thing. We're only going after, let's say, Logan City spends $5,000 a year with us. Let me finish that real fast. I'll get to you, Dan. So they spend $5,000 a year with us. Once you fly out there and visit them, how much does that cost you? If we were getting them for that $100,000, man, I'd be sending people out left and right. But I mean, I'd be flying out there, but we don't.
Okay, well, like with Birch Creek, for example, the iWorQ system, is that just the handicaps that's online and the men's association stuff that's online? What you guys have done for Birch Creek, or is it full sales format?
Nope, it is. That is just what I wrote so I could get free golf.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Anyway, it's like when you guys sell your software, though, too, it's basically you go to the city if they say they want to buy it, and you have to go there and you have to set it all up for them. Is that how it works?
Yeah, and what we do is, so we get them signed on. Like today, we got 2 contracts in. So tomorrow, hopefully, or maybe even today, one of our techs, Rex, will call them up, say, hey, we've got this contract in. When can I set up a time to train you? And then they'll set up, and we might train 1 or 2 or the group of individuals, and we'll go ahead and do it. The other thing we do is pre-sale. So we have these salesmen calling and calling and calling and calling. They might get together a demo, and we might sit with a group of people and just do a webinar over the.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I was thinking maybe is, I don't know anything about computers, but they have like the the SaaS, the SAS or whatever program. And then they have like, I just learned this today, like cloud computing and stuff like that. Is there any way you guys could set up something over like online where you could sell your software online? They could just download it from the internet. certain simple things, you could charge me a lower price and market that way.
Well, not.
Because I mean, even with something simple like what you did for Birch Street, for the handicap system, I talked to other golf courses and I tell them what we have, and you said it's simple and something wasn't that great from your point of view, but it's a lot better than a lot of golf courses.
No, it is good, and to be honest, we are marketing it. I mean, it's changed a lot since we started there. When I first wrote it, though, it was pretty. I didn't mean to put it down like that, but Garyn knows. Garyn didn't want me to write it. He didn't want me spending time doing that because we were making money on this other stuff. But I like to golf for free, and I had a relationship with Eric and your dad, and so it was,
But I mean, like simple programs like that, could you sell them over the internet and people would pay a price and they could just download it from the internet?
See, our philosophy is just different than that. Our competitors are that way. We're like building an apartment building. Every time we sell it, it's like we built. I mean, how much does it cost you? If you had $4,800 and you wanted to rent an apartment, what would you get for a year? Yeah, yeah.
4,800
Yeah, let's say 4,800.
per year.
Okay, what if you had 400 of those? If you owned them all,
That'd be pretty good.
that'd be a pretty good deal. Our idea is we're building apartments. We're just not selling anything. We don't give them anything tangible. We just have this thing that they log into. So we're really building apartments. I don't know how to build anything. I know how to build the software now, but it's not really tangible. It's kind of weird. What is our asset? Well, it's this thing on the internet. And people always want to download it. We fight that all the time. They want to own it. We don't want them to own it. We don't want them to own it. We own it. You borrow it. You rent. We own it. So it's kind of an interesting philosophy, and it's hard to grow a company like that because you're only growing at marginal. But once it gets past a certain point, now we're starting to have some freedom there. Because cities don't cancel. I mean, we got cities that don't use it and they don't cancel. So, I mean, it's... Well, because they made the investment. I've got... Yep. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say with Obama's new stimulus plan and the state's pulling all this money, and with the, how was he talking about putting money into the reconstruction, the infrastructure of the states and everything. You guys see yourselves being able to tap that market?
I've got an answer for that. It didn't affect us at all. And this is the problem with it, is it went to projects that are already planned. If the cities would have just got the money, that's what when he started talking about that, I was starting to vote for Obama, I mean, I'm like, man, send that our way, let's tax everybody else and we'll take the money, That's kind of how everybody else is looking at this. I mean, that's what he's doing. He's just, organizing a way to take money and put it around. But with that regard, if you didn't have a project, you didn't get money. So our customers really didn't benefit from it financially, so we're not going to benefit from that either. I mean, I really see that didn't happen. If you didn't have a project, you didn't get it. So they had projects already in place. There was a consultant that had a project, like 4 projects lined up that I know of with one of our customers, that if he got the deal, he was going to get $500,000 of the deal if they landed that project underneath the stimulus. So, I mean, it was for engineering services, but the engineering had already been done. So I guess that's all the questions we can have. We're going to go upstairs, and I'll be glad to talk with you about anything. I appreciate your attention. It's fun to see, students not sleeping this time of day. I'd have been asleep. So anyway, thanks so much.